The Gamestation Go has been one of the most hyped products based around Atari in the last 30 years or so. People have been anticipating this handheld unit since shortly after the release of its older brother, the Gamestation Pro. And MyArcade has been leaking out information, very tiny trips at a time in that period. But it's been out for close to a month now, and the reviews are in. Atarians on Facebook groups and on the forums declare the Atari Gamestation Go a massive success. They really seem to be enjoying what they've received. I've read a couple articles from general tech and gaming media, and even they seem to like what MyArcade and Atari have combined to release, although they have more gripes than the fanbase does. But that's to be expected, I suppose. Given that some time has passed since the release of this product, I won't go over a lot of the basics. I'm not going to list off the games, I'm not going to unbox the thing, I'm not going to do any of that stuff. Rather, I want to dive into the pros, or the successes, and the things that MyArcade did well with the Gamestation Go. Then I want to dive into the negatives, or the things that they failed at or might need to fix in the future. After that, I'll discuss the things I have no real strong feelings for either way. And, at last, I'll give my final verdict. So with that said, we have a lot to dive into, so let's get to the positives of the MyArcade Atari Gamestation Go. A lot of people really want to know about the controls, and rightfully so. The big selling point was the inclusion of a number pad, the spinner, and of course the trackball. You can get countless handhelds out there, from the Evercade to other MyArcade stuff, from the Chinese consoles from the likes of Powkiddy and Ambernick, all the way to stuff from Retroid and beyond. Almost all of them will have 4 face buttons, some sort of combination of bumpers and triggers, a D-pad, and usually a thumbstick, which the Gamestation Go is actually lacking. But all these standard controls feel good on the go, and I really like the clicky feel of the triggers, bumpers, and even the number pad. The buttons have good travel in general and are nicely responsive. But I'm sure you don't care about the standard buttons. You really want to know about the spinner, and of course, the trackball. The spinner feels pretty nice to use, and it can move endlessly in either direction. Now, personally, I would have liked it to have stopping points in a defined center, but it works well as is. And it's great for games like Breakout, Night Driver, and even Tempest. The trackball, on the other hand, feels really cheap. I heard from other people that it's like a marble, but it feels even cheaper than a marble. It's a hollow ball, and it might be the cheapest feeling control piece on this entire unit. But, with that said, it is responsive and works good. And it can even be used comfortably while gripping the unit with your hand and spinning the ball with your thumb, which was surprising to me. The controls are really what set this unit apart from everything else on the market, and overall, they work well. Now on to the selection of games, and I have to say, well, there's more hits here than misses. You got the usual filler that these compilations always have when they go for bulk. The box touts 200 games, and to hit such a large number, you'll have to add in some duds. You'll have things like 3D Tic-Tac-Toe, countless sports games, Atari Video Cube, and basic math, which is, man, that's a weird inclusion. I think it's for the memes. Anyway, there are a ton of hits on this console too. Starting with the usual suspects like Solaris, Adventure, Haunted House, Bowling, Breakout, Tempest, Scrapyard Dog, Basketball, Ninja Golf, Crystal Castles, and more. The Recharge games and Balls of Steel tables are really the highlights for myself. I feel like the marquee draw to the unit. Overall, if you want to just use this unit out of the box, and not add anything at all, you'll have a decent amount of fun. Possibly more than you would expect from a unit based around Atari, which is the main draw, mind you. I also want to talk a little bit about the battery life. It's actually really good. I heard that it gets a couple hours on a charge, but I feel that it gets close to 5 hours if you're playing solely recharge stuff or the pinball tables. And I got closer to 7 hours on a charge playing some of the more basic 2600, 5200, or 7800 games with the brightness turned down a bit. It might not sound like much time, but when you consider the large 7-inch display, well, it's pretty good. And I never felt like the unit was dying way too soon. I also like how the games are separated into several sections within the menus. There's Atari Recharge games, Atari games in general, Pinball, Pac-Man, and the stuff you don't care about after that in Chalico and Pico. Or at least I didn't care about that stuff. Then you have several subsections within those categories, such as 2600, 5200, 7800, arcade, and others as you would expect. And you can even favorite games to find them easier. But with all that said, I want to jump into the ability to sideload and add ROMs. And you'll be pleased to know that the process couldn't be easier. I got a fresh SD card from Target, didn't even format the thing or do any sort of prep, just popped it into my computer, made a games folder, and I was off. Now all the ROMs I added were legally obtained backups that I had made from my own cartridges myself, of course. But a lot of the more important ones worked flawlessly. 2600, 5200, 7800, Lynx, MAME, NES, SNES, Genesis, Game Boy, and even Nintendo 64 all worked really well. Now, consoles like N64, well, they weren't perfect. They actually struggled a little bit. But they did work, and they were playable. Almost everything as far as retail games worked without any issue. As you can see on the screen, I was trying stuff like Castlevania on the Genesis, Punch-Out on the NES, several Atari stuff, and even games on the TurboGrafx, and they all just seemed to work. I did encounter some issues, however, and I'd like to start with the fact that the Jaguar just doesn't work and the ROMs aren't recognized at all. And, well, that stinks. An Atari-based handheld needs Jaguar support. Hopefully there'll be an update in the future, but I'm not holding my breath. And as I said before, I wouldn't want to use this as my sole source of playing Nintendo 64 games, and I didn't even bother to try Dreamcast, although I'm told they work. Intellivision apparently needs a BIOS file or something to work, but I just gave up on that because, well, honestly I didn't care enough to try further. But I've been told those work as well. ColecoVision, however, doesn't work at all, which is odd, but hey, what can you do? Updates down the road could fix or add compatibility, and I'll have a link in the description so that you can find out how to add your own ROMs. But again, it's extremely simple. Also, if you're adding homebrew games to this system, it'll be hit or miss, and I think that's just by the nature of what they are. A lot of homebrew games stretch out what is possible on consoles and use outside chips and such on the cartridges that aren't really supported by emulators. So tread carefully if you're buying this to play your favorite homebrew. You might be a little disappointed.
Taste my steel.
Watch out for
Go kill some aliens.
Finally, I want to mention that an update came out while I was writing this script, and the whole process of updating was intuitive and extremely easy. You just connect the unit to your Wi-Fi network in the menu, and it will tell you when there's an update available, right from the home menu. So you select to download and install it, and you're done. It just works, easy peasy. I love how simple they made the process, and I wish they had patch notes available right from the unit. But other than that, well, I couldn't ask for more when updating the console, and I really wish Atari would take notes for their Plus line in the future. But that's really it for my positive thoughts, and I want to keep things moving right along. So let's discuss what MyArcade and the Gamestation Go didn't do right. And I want to start with my biggest disappointment, the screen. While it's nice and large at 7 inches, the thing, it doesn't look great all the time. The colors can be dull and everything can look washed out, and it makes the Recharge games especially look awful. What I expected to be vibrant neon colors were just boring and lifeless. Now let me admit, the earlier stuff, such as 2600 and 5200, all that jazz, looked absolutely fine. And I think that's because those consoles used RF for output anyway. So, those games never look great on most displays, and they look fine here. I guess for the premium price, with the premium feeling controls for the most part, I was just expecting more from the screen. Now, I wasn't necessarily hoping for IPS or OLED, but I wanted something more than what we got, because it isn't great. I also want to talk about the HDMI out experience, because right now, that's not great either. There are several issues, and it starts from the moment that you boot the unit up with the HDMI cord in place. You can tell that the splash screen isn't animating as well as it should. And while this does persist through gameplay, it doesn't seem to affect inputs. That is to say, I haven't really noticed any noticeable input lag, but I don't know, things just look a little odd. Now, some games are unplayable in this mode, such as Night Driver. The game alternates between the track and the car disappearing, and I assume it has something to do with my TV's refresh rate. But either way, it's not great, as I love that game and I would love to play it on the TV with the spinner control on the unit. The Balls of Steel pinball games are mostly unplayable as well. Something just isn't transitioning right to the television, and I can't keep up with the gameplay like I can when playing on the handheld unit itself. The gameplay is definitely hit or miss when using HDMI. And speaking of the HDMI, the cord itself is also a problem. No less than 3 times I bumped it and had it fall out of the unit or unplug slightly, which caused the unit to start rebooting. Being tethered to your television with this HDMI cord is a negative, and I hope that when the controllers come out, they can be used in lieu of the controls on the unit. There was also just a lot of weird gameplay moments that come from the emulators, I think. And I say this because I'm hoping all this stuff can be fixed with future patches. For example, when in the desert areas of Ninja Golf, or I guess the sand traps, you get weird lines around the top of the screen. It doesn't really affect much of the gameplay, but it makes you realize that you aren't playing the real thing, and it's being emulated. I also had a weird issue with Berserk Recharged, where I was able to kill everything with a touch of a single button while playing. Now, I didn't get that on video because I was playing it in handheld mode while laying in bed, but let me tell you, it was a surreal experience. The game started to look odd, enemies weren't moving, and pressing any button caused all of them to blow up and die. Well, all of them except for the little nut-looking things that chase you. I couldn't recreate this or explain it, but it happened, and I guess it could happen again. There are a few other little oddities, but the good news is that MyArcade has already started patching stuff, which is a brilliant sign for the future. Really gives me hope moving forward that all the included games will work flawlessly one day. But outside of the screen, I'd say that the options, well, that's the biggest letdown. You get the ability to change the brightness of the screen, turn off the menu music, and log into your Wi-Fi network solely for the purposes of updating. When playing some games, you can adjust spinner sensitivity, and you can change between 4.3 aspect ratio or 16:9. And, well, that's it. No save states, no button mapping, no scanline options, not anything you would expect or want. The options are just so bare bones, and it's such a letdown that it's actually impressive. How could they include so little when selling us an emulation machine? I don't know, but they did. Luckily, most of the stuff works okay as it is, but man, when playing Lynx and some other games, I really wish I could remap the keys. But that's really it for my major complaints. Overall, the GameStation Go has good points and bad points, but I just want to bring up a few more things before I give my final thoughts. First, you can't connect any controllers, except for those built for the unit themselves and released by MyArcade. At least I haven't been able to connect anything else. That's to say, no USB controllers seem to work. There's also no Bluetooth connectivity, there isn't any infrared or anything like that, it's really nothing. Personally, I don't care about this too much except when playing in HDMI mode. It would have been nice to connect some sort of controller. But I'll be honest, I probably won't be playing the unit in HDMI mode much more after this review. But even if you could get some aftermarket or secondary controllers to work, the truth is, you'd be losing some of the most important features of the GameStation Go. And that's, of course, the spinner, the trackball, and the number pad. So MyArcade selling additional controllers actually feels like a smart plan, and something that's essential, especially if you want to play 2-player, which a lot of the games included do support. Moving on to the number pad, I want to mention that it's underutilized in the stuff that shipped with the console. The 5200 games obviously use it, but there's way less than 10 of those, and most of them are real sports titles. 5200 support is just sad on the GameStation Go out of the box. But in testing ROMs on the unit, I was pleasantly surprised to find that the number pad worked with all the ROMs. So it's a fantastic inclusion, but one I probably won't be using all that much myself. And that's because I'd rather use my 5200. Which leads me to my final thoughts on the MyArcade Atari Gamestation Go. It's a fine product, but it's overpriced in my opinion. BJ's Wholesale has already started selling it at a discount, at $150, which feels closer to what it should have been right from the start. But this thing has so much cool Atari stuff, and even more gaming stuff in general when expanding and sideloading ROMs on it, that some people might be okay with the price. You get to experience the 2600, 5200, 7800, classic arcade stuff, and even the links when you add an SD card. But me, myself, I have all those things, and I've been playing them for the better part of 6 years now. And I'll continue to play them on the original consoles. So for me, this feels like something I already have, and is a bit redundant. But if you don't have a way to experience all these things, well, then you could do a heck of a lot worse than the Gamestation Go. With that said, I think the magical price would be $125 for this unit, with $150 being, okay. $180 just feels like a lot to me. But let me say this, if you're excited for this thing, well, I think you'll be happy no matter what price you pay. Because it delivered in the most important ways. It gives people an easy way to play these fantastic games using proper control schemes. If you really, really want this thing, well, I think you'll be happy with it. It could have been a huge letdown, but it isn't. And I applaud what MyArcade and Atari have done by combining forces and releasing this product to the community. But you've all heard what I've had to say about the MyArcade Atari Gamestation Go, so now I want to hear from all of you. Did you pick one up already? Do you enjoy it? And if you haven't picked one up, do you plan on it? I also like to know if you think I'm off on any of my opinions or points presented in this video. Again, let me know about all this and anything else you have to say in the comments down below. And please leave a like if you made it this far, or a dislike if you think I have no clue what I'm talking about. And subscribe for more content just like this. I'll be looking at the new Audacity game, the High Score collection from Atari, and a ton of other stuff in the coming weeks. So hit the bell icon to be notified whenever I upload. Alright guys, I've been the 7800 Pro Gamer, a man who includes a trackball and spinner for arcade accurate gameplay here at the Atari Network. And I'd like to thank you all for watching. And until next time, remember to stay classy, Atarians.